groups, what we suggest is that you choose somebody who is the person who inputs the data for your group, and you cluster around one of the computers. So in your group, decide who that might be. It would be whoever's got a computer whose macros at work, so they're enabled, they can have their macros on that. But obviously, you can also have your own computers open, you can be seeing what's happening as well with the tool. But what you're doing really is collaboratively together, putting the data into one of the computers. Also in your group, agree who will be the person who will report back to the plenary at the end of this session. So just agree who will be that person who will be taking down things that you're saying and thinking and will report back at the end, and a timekeeper as well. So those are three things that you need to have in your groups. And you are in the driving seat this time, so you are going to be in charge of putting everything in, and the resource people are there openly to help. They shouldn't be driving this exercise, they're just there if you're asking questions. You've got two different scenarios, and we heard those scenarios here from Julia and from Alex. And they are slightly different scenarios, and Phil, thank you very much for helping develop these, because what you've done is help bring out slightly different insights into the business tool. So the groups that will be looking at one of the scenarios, when you feedback, the others should be listening carefully, because it will be telling you things that you didn't really experience in your group, and vice versa. And so what are those differences? We can have a look now. So with the first exercise, which is the Coombe Valley Countryside Park, which are the groups that are doing the Coombe Valley Countryside Park? That group number 1 and number 4. As you'll see on the table, you received by email, but I've also printed out, you have the map there of the area, which is the Coombe Valley Countryside Park. What's in red, obviously that isn't going to be developed, as the areas in green. So this is a largely undeveloped, unimproved area of green space, separating the urban areas of Bexhill and St Leonard's in East Sussex. And as we heard from Julia, it's currently used, kind of underused, but it's used for football, for dog walking, and then fishing in the pond. The bottom area is liable to runoff and flooding. Now, what's the challenge? The council wants this part of the site to be an activity-based park, promoting what we were just hearing about before lunch and on the visit to London Wall Place, healthier lifestyles. So this is where you're going to be looking at the tool as it helps you understand healthier lifestyles, and providing a recreational resource for your local people, again the cultural ecosystem values, whilst also addressing flooding and encouraging biodiversity. So the exercise focuses on that data for cultural ecosystem values, but it also takes you through ways to keep within budget. So that's also going to be a key focus of you two groups. You're going to be looking at what the costings are of that and tweaking to make sure that you can achieve those aims within budget. So you're going to get that insight into the business tool, and you're going to be able to see a comparison of grey and green infrastructure options. So that's group 1 and 4. That's your scenario. Now we go to the Cambourne Business Park, and you'll see that Julia should be doing Cambourne and Alex should be doing Coombe Valley. I hope that's right, so you're actually doing a scenario which isn't your own. And in Cambourne Business Park, as we heard from Alex during the panel session, so Cambourne Town is a new settlement within which lies the business park, which is already partially occupied. Attractively landscaped with grass, trees and hedges, a large flower meadow and 3 ponds, so it's already got a lot of attractive features and biodiversity. The development of remaining plots will therefore mean a loss to that biodiversity, which is what Alex was telling us. So they've actually got a very different challenge. It's not how you enhance biodiversity, it's how do you mitigate the loss of it and therefore do other things to keep your biodiversity values up. So the council wants to develop the plot 4 to 10, mitigating the impact of biodiversity and providing values higher, and I don't think you mentioned it necessarily this morning in the panel, Alex, but her members have said, no, not just 10% biodiversity net gain, we want 20, actually at least 20% biodiversity net gain on a very small plot, which has to be also an office complex. So that's the challenge. So how we can get at least 20% biodiversity. And again, air quality is important, and it needs to provide that attractive setting. We heard about from Alex about the market wants to have an attractive setting for employees to come into this if they're going to invest and occupy this space. So again, you'll be looking at, in this group, you'll find out how the business tool has a lot of detailed features about smaller elements for increasing your biodiversity within a small area. So what are the biodiversity elements of design in a small area that can really up your biodiversity values? And we'll also be looking at the costs and keeping within budget. In the first workshop, you didn't have a chance to look at how you do the costings and the comparisons. That's what you will be doing today at those groups. Okay. If you have somebody who's decided who is going to be doing the inputting the data, you have somebody to read the first scenario, the challenge that's there. So explain exactly what you do in terms of the group exercise. Somebody read that to the group. And you've got the timings there as well, so somebody will be a timekeeper. And you're off.
Borough Council, I'm a planning policy officer. We had exercise 2, so the business part. So working through it, initially we made some minor changes, such as adding tall grass, bee hotel, deadwood, that kind of thing. So small, simple changes. And that saw a fairly significant impact on 3 of the ecosystems, so the birds, butterflies, and bees. There was no significant impact to the amphibians, but that was already quite good before we started, so we weren't terribly focused on that side of it. When it came to the budget side of things, we were about £200,000 over budget because of the cost of the green roof. So we halved the green roof, which then allowed us to be able to come within budget. But one thing that we didn't get around to doing was going back into the program to see what impact that would have on the various ecosystems. So that's still stuff that we would have to do.
So this was the Camborne Business Park, where it's already quite attractive and landscaped around, but they're trying to develop this plot, and it's a small plot. So what you were doing was the green roof and these lots of small things, but you said they really did increase.
Yeah, in terms of the ecosystem side of things, it added a lot of value.
On the biodiversity side.
Yeah.
And on the cultural ecosystem, so in terms of the visitor, sort of the employees' enjoyment of that space, was that fine too?
Well, when we had to go through and do that subjective exercise of identifying kind of what the priorities were for there, we didn't feel that the employees' enjoyment would be the key focus. It would be more about the business operation side of things, because they're the ones making the final decision. So our model didn't show a huge impact on that, but maybe if we had scored it differently or saw the value of that differently, what we had actually put in probably would have scored a bit higher.
Okay, really interesting. We can see there the differences. If you sort of think that's not the priority, then not the scoring changes. Good. Thank you very much. And well, how did you find it? How did you find the model? Is it different from what you were expecting?
Well, I attended the first workshop, so I had a vague idea of how to use it. I still feel like I would need to go away and play with it a bit more, and it'd be nice to have something that would be specific to where I work, so then I would gain a better understanding of using that. But that's enough for me to do on my own.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. Great. And we'll now have group number 3. Good, and while you're coming up, we'll call on group number 1 to come and take a chair as well, and this group too. Look at the face.
We've lost our speaker.
You've lost your speaker, can somebody speak for them? Will they be back in a minute?
No.
No, he's gone. Will you be able to give some comments on it?
Yeah, okay.
Here we go. Come up and join. Fantastic. And group number 1, please. No, it couldn't be you. It shouldn't be you at all. Yeah? Alex. Is that okay? Okay, good. So introduce yourself and your council, but also introduce which of the case studies that you are about to speak to. Thank you very much.
Chris Bibb, I work for Lewis and Eastbourne Councils in the Parks and Spaces team. We did the Camborne case study, and we worked quite well through the form. We picked up some points around the formatting and some of the descriptions on the form that we wanted to sort of feed back to the developers. But regarding the exercise that we did, we basically went in quite hard and put biodiversity and ecology in the environment at the forefront. So we maxed out on everything, just to see how that would affect the end score.
Bold, radical.
Much to the tutting of our moderator.
She did come up and kept saying, I can't control them.
And maybe to all our surprise, it actually worked out quite well. So we put in, we went for as small amount of weed and grass as absolutely possible and put absolutely everything in. And then we were able to tweak that a little bit by...
Can you give an idea of when you say everything in? Because there's some that, so the other groups didn't see the kind of biodiversity elements. Can you just give us a taste of the kind of things that you included?
Oh, we put in hedges, trees, tall grass, different types of water, so standing water, but then nutrient-rich and nutrient-poor standing water, tall reeds and grasses in the water, berry gardens.
No, you weren't.
Woodland?
Oh no, we took the berry
You
gardens.
were not. That was my one win with them.
So you put a new water element in the plot?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the concept was one of the ponds was nutrient rich, one wasn't.
Right.
And the form allowed us to do it. Once we sorted out how the form worked, we were able to do that. And we had to increase, yes, actually we only put in nutrient poor first, and that wasn't noted as good for an amphibian, so we had to change that to a nutrient rich and a nutrient poor, so the amphibian score went up.
Okay. Yeah.
And then we had to make some changes. So we took out the berry garden and we made our savings just by reducing the amount on the green roof. But apart from that, everything else scored well. We kept the maintenance budget the same as the existing baseline, pretty much within £200. Brought it in within budget.
So when we were mentioning kind of that sort of food idea, so you've got lots of biodiversity, not necessarily food growing, but you have lots of biodiversity otherwise.
Yeah, we did have food growing as well. We did have a community allotment space.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Is there an office space too? No.
Not necessarily.
Oh, no, lost the office.
Yeah, and it was interesting. It was interesting the way we were able to tweak the prices, tweak the amounts. The gentleman put his name, he showed us that you could change the parameters, so there's a cost range between the lowest and the highest, and it was using the average, and if you wanted to use the lowest or highest.
So you actually were getting into turbo power in your business model,
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so we used the average price, but then we changed it around just to see how that would affect things, the maintenance cost.
And have you ever had something like that where you can tweak even kind of the costs in that way?
It's quite useful to us.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
Yes, so basically some feedback around the form, just maybe some slight tweaks around how it's designed, might make it easier to compare two things. There was some jargon, maybe a suggestion of a jargon tab, so things like RC, which we didn't understand until it was explained. Maybe that could be just in front of you so that you could look and see how that works.
Right.
And a note from our ecologist in our group that beehives are not particularly good for ecology. It's bee hotels and form shares bee hotels.
Beehives are good for honey, but they're not good for biodiversity.
Competes with the other pollinators.
Yeah, you want the other pollinators. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Wonderful. Thank you very much. Very interesting. Stay there and sit back and give you. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, hello, I'm Danielle Carver at Essex Wildlife Trust. Wasn't prepared for this, so I'm just going to ramble on a little bit. But we had Coombe Valley Countryside Park, much of it was already populated for us, so it was phase 1 of the plan, so it was the sort of basic changes that they're going to put in place initially. So
can I just, so those who didn't have this one, so this is the countryside part that had a master plan written in different phases. So in the baseline scenario, those have been populated as phase 1 as if that had happened?
Yes, so it was things like reducing amenity grasslands but increasing flower fields. We did discuss a little bit about what flower fields meant, because that's a little bit ambiguous, but yeah, tall grass, a few scrapes, because one of the bigger focuses was looking at water retention, because a certain area was prone to flooding, and then it was looking very much the master plan was at looking sort of outdoor activities, trying to get people to have a better, healthier lifestyle, getting out and about, interacting with nature. So we did chat a lot about how that might be brought about, because one of the main things was a footpath and the other was interpretation design. So we filled it all in, and one of the things that we did come across was that originally in the sort of pre-populated table, they had picked impermeable surfaces, so that came out as being quite expensive, and then decided to do it around the fishing pond. So we looked very carefully at the difference between impermeable and permeable, and then obviously looking at water retention within that as well. So it really gave us an insight into costs and differences, and how that linked towards the sort of main master plan. And yeah, I suppose one of the comments we had was that maybe this one was less focused on biodiversity, which is fine. It was more, you know, based on recreation, outdoor activity. So at the end, when we looked at our fact sheet, we'd sort of gone from a baseline of either 0 or 1 to an improvement of 2. So for phase 2 and 3, there was a lot of movement in terms of what else you could do for biodiversity, and we did actually come out under budget after lots of tweaking.
There you go, Julia.
So I think overall we thought that the tool was good, really, at looking at the differences between different paths and playgrounds and things like that, and the cost, rather than necessarily the creative side, because we didn't do that bit, sadly.
No, but I think it is good, because in the first workshop, you know, people saying, but what about the costings, and how, you know, how does that happen, and how can you get an insight into that? So good.
Yeah, and we didn't change. So when we did do the costing, the flower field and the tall grass came out as extremely expensive, which we did question, because obviously I don't think there needs to be any cost around that. It's just management plans, obviously it's capital costs. So yeah, we did have a discussion about what that might.
They've both gone, haven't they? Yes, we can make that.
Oh, we did.
You asked that?
Yeah, I raised it with Rico, so we can
check it out.
But
Great.
he assured us that it will have come from the literature, but it probably needs a bit
it's
more
expensive.
thinking.
Yeah, and in the business model itself, you can override.
Yeah, we did. We put 0 instead of 85,000.
85,000.
Yeah.
Just for long grass.
Is that why you came on?
The clues in the 3 0. Okay, great.
Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you so much. Excellent, thank you.
That was really comprehensive. I don't know what to add, but yeah, so we had Coombe Valley as well. I think we spent quite a lot of time going through the questions and kind of having that conversation as almost like a project team. So it kind of worked really nicely where we.
You look very studious, because you all had your computers there and you were all doing it together.
We were all together kind of looking at answering the questions and just making sure that we were coming back to the original drivers for the project and making sure that we scored them appropriately to start off with. Because I think that's really important, like the scoring at the beginning and making sure that you're setting the weighting properly against the criteria.
And have you done that? Because that's an interesting step, isn't it?
Yes, and then when you then go back and look and actually say, okay, so does the scenario help us to achieve what we said we wanted, and you know what the drivers of the project were originally? I think we came out over budget to start off with, and then it made us go back and have a discussion about the cost of the interpretation signs and the impermeable pathway. I'm looking to my colleagues.
So what did you do? Did you reduce the amount of them?
We reduced both aspects, I think, to a certain extent, to just try and bring that budget back in. And I think something that I'm not sure we did, but it's almost going back and just checking that reducing that didn't have an impact on the actual benefit side of things. And I don't think it would have changed things massively in terms of the scoring between, you know, whether something was supporting people to go and use that recreational area, and I don't think it would change it massively. So so actually you'd still be getting the benefits for slightly less money. So but I think you have to have that conversation to go back round and just make sure that the tweaks that you're making are going to actually bring the benefits down as well as the cost. If that makes sense.
So my name's Joseph Foster. I work for the government in the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. It was weird doing this because I'm the only one who's not a local authority, which is what this is based for. But you know, it's.
But you are overseeing what local authorities do in enabling kind of local people.
Yes. Yes.
Good. And so, which business scenario?
So we had business scenario B, which is Campbell Business Park. It's about mitigating the negative impacts of the office development. And I guess, please correct me if I get things wrong, because I probably will. But we kind of initially, I think our key focus kicked off really when we were looking at kind of the sort of section tab C biodiversity. You know, what is it that we're trying to? We went straight ahead with the kind of biodiversity impacts side of things. Doing great things around amphibians, bees, and butterflies.
So you could see the changes that you got from them.
Yeah. That was really interesting to see. And it's looking back now, what's quite interesting is that the kind of almost our brief so much was not so much we want to create a really biodiverse place, but we want to we sort of went ahead and we wanted to make something fantastic and an ecosystem as possible. But so we might have overstepped the remit a little bit in that direction. But it was really interesting to see that how it kind of even slight changes made a huge difference.
And was there any one of those slight changes that really surprised you about how much it pushes things?
I'm not sure I was surprised, but the big change in having fish just ruins everything. Which blows my mind a bit.
In a pond?
In a pond.
In a pond.
But yeah, having the ability to make those slight changes around something when you look crazy as well and show it to people, I think would be absolutely fantastic. I'd love to get that out there. So we looked through that first, and in terms of kind of the cultural ecosystem services for us, what we kind of almost jumped the other way, so it's less about nature, almost, but kind of, how can we make this a really good sort of place for office workers, but we don't want to kind of trap them outside too much because they need to be in the office doing their jobs, not working on the.
Oh, they've got little notes on their desk saying, "Where are you?"
It'd be really good news. So we won't be handing little shovels to go out to the allotment, but having that prompt to think about, not just kind of the sort of quantities about kind of the aims. I think that was really.
And so when you did that was interesting. You did the importance and prioritisation, and then you looked at those, and they came up with those values, did they, in terms of?
Yes.
Great.
Yes. In terms of being able to sort of rank them in terms of what's most important, least important. I used to, before I worked in central government, I worked in local government, getting things down to a more limited cognitive bandwidth for members, less than.
Yeah.
Quite possible. So I think that was a really useful part of the exercise. And don't tell myself. I think the budget. We went over the budget, I'm afraid.
You did.
We did. Sorry.
Which part? Was that the lower cognitive step or the higher cognitive step that you failed in your task?
Yes, but I think one thing we picked up on was we talked about this a lot, probably too much, I'd say, but the monetary benefits and how that is, how you define that, how you kind of just make that part of the business case. So our maintenance costs were actually lower, probably because you only need to water grass, but you need to spend lots of money fixing potholes, as my family tells me as well. And so that kind of approach, if we can kind of, if there's a way to perhaps kind of really define the monetary benefits in a way that isn't just you get X amount of money per year back in the pockets of the council, then that was something.
I think somebody else mentioned about sort of the health and wellbeing side of it. So, and I don't know. So we mentioned it in the first workshop. So the ONS has a web page where you can go on and put your postcode in, and if you put your postcode in, it will tell you what the tree canopy is like. But it won't just tell you that, it will tell you what that has done to reduce the NHS burden in terms of health and disease. So it tells you how much the tree canopy is reducing the health burden in terms of cost to the NHS. And if we could have a bit more of that kind of tracking and quantification, direct linking, would be great.
Anything to illustrate it.
Yeah. Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd like to invite Anna now. And please, I just wanted to say
a huge thank you to everybody. Thank you for coming along. We decided to make this a physical workshop. We were a little bit nervous, just coming out of COVID and some of the restrictions, but we had good attendance, but we were really delighted to have you all here, and thank you very much for the active and engaged role you've taken. It's not always easy when you're given work exercises to do, but everyone jumped into it. It was really nice to see everyone working hard and sharing their ideas. But I want to just finish up really quickly by talking about the business model. We've given you some pre-populated versions. You're probably wondering when you're going to get the actual tool itself. So at the moment, the business model isn't available online. It's not freely accessible online because we were conscious that there might be some further tweaks that we needed to make after this next set of workshops across our 4 project countries. We will be officially launching the business model at our project closing conference on the 29th of September, but we will make it available much earlier, as soon as we can really, from our website. And as soon as we do that, we will notify you all. We have your email addresses, we'll let you know. It's on the website, it's available to use. When we make it available, it's not available just on its own. There is a kind of handbook to support users, which comes in 2 parts. The first part is there's a kind of step-by-step guidance document. It also includes a flow chart so you can see how you're progressing through the different worksheets in the tool, and it kind of prompts you when you need to go back or when you need to do things. It's very, very step-by-step, and hopefully will handhold people through the process with little need for any other assistance, really. And then the second part is the technical manual. If you want to know where the data's come from, if you're interested in the calculations, you can find all of that information there. I'm quite conscious though that that means that in the meantime, if you want a copy of the business model, where can you get it? Well, if you do want to use it quite soon, please email you myself and Michelle, and we will be able to send you what we're calling a beta version at the moment. So we can send you a version should you want to over the next few weeks or month, have a play with it. But we will just put that caveat that we might make a few further tweaks in the next month just to iron out anything that we picked up over the course of these workshops. Does anyone have any questions about the availability of the business model? One thing I would say is that we didn't get your feedback on the business model, particularly anything that you might have noticed or want to see addressed. So if you do have any comments of how it can be improved, please send them to us. We would be really grateful for those, and we'll see what we can do during the lifespan of this project with the budget we've got, but we're also looking for ways to continue the project going forward, so they could always feed into another phase of the project in whatever form it goes forward. So I think that brings me to the end. I just wanted to say, where am I? I can't say, sorry. Say that the recording, So you notice we've got people recording, and they're going to be producing highlights video. They've done full recordings of all the presentations, the panel discussions, and we will look to make those available as soon as we can. If you want to see any of those again or share them with colleagues. So stay tuned for those. And that brings me to the end, really, just to say thank you once more, and to shamelessly ask you, if you haven't already, and you liked our business model video, to vote for it in the Interreg 2Cs Awards. Just pretend, Joseph needs to pretend they hasn't seen me plugging it. So thank you very much, everybody, and a safe journey home. Also, just a few thank yous I forgot. I just want to say a huge thank you to Pippa for facilitating the workshop and helping us put that together. Huge thank you to my colleague Rochelle, who's been helping with all the logistics. And also to my colleagues Phil and Matt. Phil produced the scenarios we worked with. He's been working a lot with local authorities on testing the business model. Matt's been helping us with the organisation, some of the testing. And some of our colleagues unfortunately had to leave us. And we've also had Alex help and support me. So I'd like to thank her as well. But thank you.